Hello, this is Gavin Patterson from Studio 1790, and today we're going to talk about gain staging. So, gain staging, for guitarists out there, will probably already know what this is. Gain staging is in a signal chain, maintaining proper gain balance through the whole chain. Sounds a bit abstract, so we'll just go straight into Cubase and I'll show you what I mean. So we'll take a snare drum. Why not? So I am doing lots of editing to the snare drum. We'll start at the top. So the way I do things is I record the audio on an audio track, and then I send the audio to an effects track. A lot of people don't do this. They like to just have all their plugins on the audio tracks, but I don't like to do that because I'm mixing in stereo, obviously, but these are mono tracks, and I don't want mono effects necessarily. I want it to be treated as dual mono kind of thing. So it's a different type of thing. You get stereo and mono plugins, different versions of the same plugin. So it's just cleaner that I just have my audio up the top and my effects channels here. They start here. So it's a mirror image kind of thing. So, kick, snare, all that at the top in audio, and then go down to the effects and it's the same deal, kick, snare, all being routed to these things. So we'll start at the top. So here's the snare drum. I'll just set up a loop here. Let me just check. Yep. Okay, so the first thing I have here, talking about gain. So, well, the first things first, I guess. See the audio here. It is not clipping. So these peaks are not clipping. If they were clipping, they would probably look like that, right? And then you would zoom in and you would get this happening. I'm just increasing the what would you call that? So you can see the peaks easier. It's just for viewing. It's not actually increasing the gain. If I wanted to increase the gain, I would just click it and then increase the volume. That is increasing the gain. But it's still not clipping because it's just raising the volume inside Cubase. But pretend for a second that was recorded like that. See that square? It's been squared off. That's how you create a square wave, and that creates digital distortion, which sounds dreadful. You do not want this digital distortion, and the way you get that is if you're recording into your interface, you basically turn your interface input up too high until it starts to clip, and then you get digital distortion, and it's disgusting. So I haven't done that. I've recorded it well. Nothing has clipped. See, the highest peak here is there. That snare drum there's. The drummer must have hit it, which is really, really hard. But it's not even halfway to clipping, so it's loud enough that the signal to noise ratio is far enough apart. So it's a decent gain to start with. So first thing I do, this is an ML2, a Slate ML2 microphone, which is a modeling microphone. So I'm using modeling software. So I like to get, if you look at that, I like to get it into the yellow. So that's like between -3 and -12 dB. So not into the red. I just like it just to be sort of around about here. I use trimmer. Trimmer is just volume. That's all it is. It's in the Virtual Mix Rack plugin, and it's going into the mic emulation. So I like to hit the mic emulation quite high, not hot, so that it's like hitting the red. I don't like that. Just about there, because the emulation won't be accurate. And this comes with preamp emulation as well. So this adds a little bit of color and saturation. So that's based on analog gear that sort of rounds out the signal, makes it sound a little bit less tinny, bright. You can also distort this as well. See the red light? You can hear the distortion. So that's the plugin distorting. Not Cubase, but it's analog emulation, which means it's technically analog, but not really because it's in a computer. But to all intents and purposes, it's analog distortion, which is nice sounding. Digital distortion, not nice sounding. So I've done that, and I'm sending it, like I said, to my snare top effects channel. First thing I do is I've got a gate. So your gate, that's just taking out some information I don't want. So I've got a debleeder as well. So I've got a lot of hi-hat bleed in this song. Or ride cymbal in this case. If I turn it off, I'll show you what I mean. So what this does is it takes the high end off the cymbals, but not the snare drum. It's quite clever actually. This plugin's great. And it's also got just a standard gate as well. I'll turn that off. I'll turn the whole thing off. See? So it's only letting through the snare hits. When I turn it off, everything comes through. So it's quite a cool plugin. I'm also adding lots of EQ and a little bit more of console saturation. And I forgot to say, I'm also adding console saturation on the audio input as well. So next in the stage, and nothing's distorting. Nothing yet anyway. But we'll get to that because it's going to distort soon. So doing a little bit of EQ, nothing too crazy. Okay, I'm distorting. It's in the red. See that? In fact, interesting. If I get a trimmer, this will tell me if I'm distorting after all this. Okay, no. I'm in the orange, but I'm not in the red yet. So, but this is distorting. But this plugin has the headroom to cope with it, and it doesn't sound bad. It doesn't sound like it's crackling. I'll turn all the reverbs off just to make life easier. Nope. Okay, apparently I can't. Let me just listen to that then. Okay. There we go. Right. That doesn't sound bad. Even though plus 7.3, plus 4.6, plus 4.5. So technically, if that goes above 0, that's clipping. But this plugin doesn't really mind going that high. It's actually not too bad. This is a great plugin. I really like this one. So after that, I'm hitting it with some tape emulation. So again, I've brought the input gain down so that the plugin is not distorting. But I'll show you what happens when I do distort it. Yeah. Hear that buzz? All the punch disappears. But it doesn't sound as bad as real digital distortion. It sounds kind of nice actually. You could probably make an effect of that. So, and last but not least, compressor. Now this red light will go on all the time. There. So technically this is distorting. There's red lights everywhere. Now when I was in college doing sound engineering, or I had a sound engineering class, I was actually at college for music, but in the sound engineering module we were told red light mean bad. If you see red light, turn down. And that's not true at all. If you see red lights, usually means good when it comes to analog gear. If you're making the plugin, in this case, cook hard in the red, that's probably a good thing. You're actually making the music do something. If I was to mix this song without having any red lights, it would be so boring. Everything would be so tame and bland. Like I'm adding like 15 decibels of 7.5K, 9, nearly 10 decibels of, I'm going crazy with stuff, and I'm hammering the crap out of the snare drum with this compressor. Let me turn it down till the red light goes off. We'll see what that sounds like. God, it's even still red. Still red. Basically just doesn't go red. It doesn't go anything else other than red. So that's funny. Oh well. Well, it sounds good anyway. Okay, let's go to the fader, because that's another bit of gain. Okay, let's look at it. 14.3. Look at it. Let's turn it up. Yeah, that sounds fine. 21.2 decibels. But in Cubase and in most DAWs, if you look at the faders, look at that, it's right up into the stratosphere. If you turn all these faders up in a DAW like Cubase or Pro Tools, it will not distort unless it distorts here at your stereo out. That's the important part. If you manage to keep it under 0 here, it doesn't matter what the rest is doing. That's the most important part. There is only one fader in your DAW, including all of your plugins, that you need to care about being red, and that is this fader here, the output. And let me just unsolo. There you go. So I have mixed this song, well, in the process of mixing this song, there you go, it peaked at minus 0.8, so it's still under 0. That's what I'm always looking out for. I'm making sure that my master doesn't go into 0, because then when you go into 0 on your master output, you're clipping digital distortion. So when I print this mix, when I export this song, that needs to be under 0 all the way through the whole song. It cannot go above 0, because you'll start to introduce digital distortion, and you don't want that. The rest of the faders, who cares? Let's see the drum master. How hard is that? Well, the drum master's quite low actually, but the snare's ridiculous. It's 21.2 decibels peak. That's insane. It's technically not possible to go above 0 in digital. Only on your output. I think if you did, there's some weird mathematical thing, like the universe would implode or something. Look that up. It's a weird thing. There's some mathematical thing. If you go above 0, I don't know. It's some strange, like it's basically impossible to go above without distorting. I don't know why. It's very complicated mathematics. But the only fader you need to care about is the output. You can distort in between, because that's what distortion is. Distortion is clipping. It's analog distortion. That's the one we like. So amplifier, guitar amp distortion. That's the signal is clipping. it's usually through a valve or an emulation of a valve. If you were to have digital distortion, it would sound terrible. Not nice at all. So distortion is actually good. Distortion is what gives you character, and it's the sound you want in a mix. But you do not want that output fader. So this is my mix bus here. This is what everything goes through. And then that mix bus gets sent to the stereo output of Cubase. So that's all my plugins there in my mix bus. It's insane how much I have here. So first one I have is gain. Next one is, that's part of a summing mixer, which I think I'm going to show in the next video. So that's all the channels have summing on them. And then I think it's gain and then console emulation, adding more distortion. Compressor. With distortion, drive, adding crunch. EQ. Then gain again, bringing the gain way down before it hits. More distortion. That's the tape saturation to give it more distortion. Distortion and harmonics. So it's distorting or changing, affecting the sound by clipping it. That's the whole point. And then another one. There's a vinyl emulator thing. This is really cool actually. Here a before and after. So that's off. On. Off. Go back in the video and listen to those comparisons. When you turn that on, all the high ends of the cymbals become all crisp and lovely. And then when you take it off, it just all disappears. That's distortion, technically. It's changing the characteristics of the signal. I've got a little bit of drive on, and it gives it a wee bit of crunch. But it's good. It's good to distort. You want to have some distortion. Now, of course, if you're looking in your GarageBand session or your Logic session, and all the faders are like, way, everything's and all the levels are peaking, you're maybe doing something wrong. So make sure that your gain is not out of control before you've started. Like I said way back at the beginning of this video, on my snare top, it's recorded well to start with. There's no distortion out the gate. And maintain control of your gain all the way through your plug-in process. So I needed a little bit more gain, so I've added some. Go down to the snare here. The gain was fine all the way through this. And within these plugins as well, I can affect gain. For example, on this one, it's got an output and input. I can, if I feel that, it's a little bit hot coming out of this plugin, I can just bring that down. And then the next plugin it hits will have less of an input, and so on. So you're maintaining your gain as you go. So when it ends up at the final mix bus, it shouldn't go above, see that one was at 0.8. So that's all good. I would play the whole song and see if that peaks. And then usually what I do, if it's like, say it's like 0.5 or something above 0, I'll just bring the master fader down a bit. Bring it down by 1 or something. And then that stops that from hitting 0. And then export. That's basically all I do. So same goes for guitar pedals. Same goes for anything that has effects and gain in a signal chain. Just make sure that it doesn't compound and get louder and louder and louder until you're getting to some, say you've got an EQ plugin or an EQ pedal, and you've already hit it with a distortion pedal, a compressor pedal, and then it gets into your EQ, and the input's far too high for that EQ to deal with. You need to bring the volume down before you hit the EQ, for example. And then when it comes back out, you can then change it again. So each plugin has its own thing it likes. And you can experiment. Try it really hot into the plugin and then bring it down and see what sounds best. And you'll get to know your plugins and what they like to have. High level, low level, mid. Can it distort? Sometimes you turn it way, way, way up and it'll never distort. Depends on the design. Some plugins I have, you don't have to hit it with much and it distorts immediately. So I like to, for example, with regards to gain staging, I've got it on my mix bus. So if you look here, here is, I like this plugin. This is a summing mixer. I'm going to explain this in the next video. But it doesn't have an input knob. So what I've done is I've got a virtual mix rack. That's what this one here. All it is volume going into this, and then when it comes back out, hitting this one. So look what I'm doing. I'm going down here and up there because this thing doesn't like high signal. It distorts really easily. So I'm reducing the volume going into it so that I can get the nice sound that this likes, but then I want to raise the gain again to hit other plugins hard. So I'm gain staging properly so that this thing gets to speak properly, because it doesn't like being loud. So you've got to set up a good gain stage through all your plugins and see which one sounds best at what levels. And you know, one plugin might be like, oh, I love distortion, it's great, and another one's like, no, don't give me high levels because I'll just sound bad. And that's one of them. This one's terrible if you hit it too hard. So I'm gain staging through this whole thing. So just something to think about for your own stuff at home. It can be quite daunting, all this stuff, obviously, but just practice with your levels and your gain. Sometimes when earlier on in my career, when I started mixing, everything would get so loud so fast. And if you're finding that, for example, that you're mixing away and you see your mix bus is clipping here. It's like up, way up high. And you go, oh, it's okay, I'll just turn it down. No. You're better to go back to your mix and start everything low. I always recommend, actually, to start off a mix. I'll use these faders for an example. So I'll use the effects faders. So I like to start a mix with the faders across the whole board like that, starting from there. Don't start from 0. Start from about, well, maybe even more, -12, we'll say. I usually start around -12. Put that back up to 0. So pretend that's channel 1 here, 2, 3, etc. Start from here. So if you need more, go to there. If you need less, go to there. Don't start from 0. Because if you start from 0, you're like, oh, I want it to be louder, and you've maxed out. Oh, I want this to be louder. Maxed out, maxed out, maxed out. And the next minute, all your faders look like that. You know, they're all up extremely high like that, rather than being down here, being more controlled, so that you're not hitting your mix bus super hard. I mean, look at my channels here. So ignore everything that I've just affected here. But from here, from this channel here onwards to the left, look how low everything is. The highest one I've got on here is my tom track here. So, and it's only at 0. I've got my kick and my snare top, that's the rim click, snare bottom. Look how low they are, because I've started from a reasonable place. I haven't started way, way high up at 6 decibels. So that's something else to think about just when you go to start a mix. Don't start with the faders all up high. Start with them down low, like -12, and work from there. And you'll find that when you come to look at your final print, your mix bus will not distort. It'll probably be sitting at like somewhere between -10 and 0. And then if you're like clipping over like 0.5 or 1 decibel over 0, just bring the master fader down just a wee bit. But don't bring it down 10 dB. If you're doing that, then you're doing something wrong. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to say in this video. If you have any questions about gain staging, please leave a comment, and as always, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell if you want to be pestered every time a video comes out, because everyone loves notifications. But until the next video, hope you have a fantastic couple of days gain staging all your mixes, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.